Hi, I'm Sharon with Site B Fibers. For our first intro weeding project, we're going to make this really fun buffalo checks table runner. It looks hard, but it's actually a really fun introductory project because you get to work with two different colors of yarn and you learn how to do stripes in both the warp and the weft. So this is what it looks like when it's finished. This is what it's going to look like when you take it off the loom. So we use the toilet paper as a spacer, and you can see we have these threads here. So I'm going to teach you how to change colors and how to start and end a new yarn. This is the kind of yarn we're going to use for our first project. We're going to use Encore, which is a really nice kind of workhorse yarn, great for a first time project. It's a washable wool and acrylic blend. And in order to do this, we need two different colors of Encore. You can use contrasting colors like I have, or you can use more subtle differences depending on what you want your finished piece to look like. This is a worsted weight yarn. So we're gonna set this yarn at 7.5 ends per inch. And you're gonna learn what that means. So to do this, we're going to be working on a 16-inch rigid Heddle loom. All right, so here's our loom. And it's 16 inches wide. This is the width of the loom, so that's the widest piece we can make. This is what we call the Heddle, and you can see here I've marked it off so you can measure out your inches as you go. So there's going to be a thread through every slot and every hole when we warp our loom. So that's going to go in here. We're going to need 2 stick shuttles. So these are used to wrap the yarn around so that you can use this to weave back and forth. And we need 2 because we're going to have 2 different colors. We're going to use what's called a threading hook. The threading hook we use to thread the slots. The big side of the hook is for the slots. And then the little side of the hook goes through the holes. The other thing we'll need is a warping peg. So the warping peg is really useful because we're going to do what's called indirect warping. So we're going to clamp the peg across the room somewhere so that we can make our warp lengths the length we want it. We've got our warping peg, and then we have a clamp for the loom itself. The other thing we always need when we're weaving is rubber bands. Rubber bands are so useful in weaving. So we need 2 rubber bands, and we need paper. This paper is hopefully 16 inches wide. So the paper is the width of the loom so that as you wind your warp on, you're going to separate it with the paper so that your warp threads don't get tangled. That's how we're going to make our beautiful buffalo check table runner. Okay, so let's get this loom set up for weaving. I'm going to clamp the loom to the table. So every loom has at least 1 hole in the back. This is a smaller loom, so it only has 1. But larger looms will have 2 clamps, 2 holes. And we're going to take one of these clamps and we're going to clamp it down to the table. All right, so I'm going to put the clamp in the hole and then I'm just going to attach it to the table. And this is really nice because it keeps your loom from moving around when you're trying to warp it. Okay, so there's that. So we're nice and secure. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the Heddle in there. This is our 7.5 dent Heddle. What that means is we're going to be spacing our yarn at 7.5 yarns per inch. It doesn't come marked like this, but I mark it with a big dash in the middle for the center of the Heddle. And then I mark a small dash for every inch from the middle. So I'm going to put the markings close to me, facing me, so I can, or facing the back of the loom, so that I can use that as I'm measuring out my warp. The loom has 3 different heights. It has down, neutral, and up. So I'm going to put the Heddle in the neutral position in the front. And here's where our rubber bands come in. Rubber bands I'm going to use to fasten just to secure my Heddle to the back dowel rod. All right, so for warping, we don't want everything flopping around. So just putting 2 rubber bands on there will just keep everything nice and secure. We have these 2 stick shuttles, but we don't need them right now. For the warping process, we can just set those aside. So the guide string, I measured out, I used a yardstick to measure this out because we want our warp to be 1.5 yards long. So I made the guide string 3 yards long so that it's twice the length of what I want. So I'm going to tie the guide string. Okay, this is all going to make sense here. So I have 3 yards. So I'm going to tie it on each side of my back dowel rod. So I have it tied on here. And now I'm going to tie it on to the other side. And this is how I'm going to get my warp threads the right length for my project. So now I have a nice big long loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over here, and on this table I'm going to clamp my warping peg. So I'm going to clamp it so that it's right across from my loom. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just loop my guide string. I'm going to adjust the distance of this table so that my guide string is just tight. It doesn't need to be like too much tension. And now I have my loom. Every warp thread is going to be 1.5 yards long. Okay, so my guide string is just there to measure. We're going to take it out after we're done measuring out our work. First thing we have to do is center our piece on the heddle. So I'm going to count over 5 inches from the center and using the marks on the back of the heddle. And I'm going to tie my green thread at the 5-inch mark with a nice secure double knot. So I've tied my yarn onto the back dowel, and I'm just going to hook it right through the slot. Okay, now I'm going to go onto the other side of the loom for the rest. Alright, so now just put it right over the peg. Now I'm going to bring around the dowel, make sure it always goes around the back dowel, and then into the next slot. And then I'm just going to gently pull it so it goes around the peg. So I'm going to keep doing this until I have 2 inches, and I can tell that by the markings on the heddle. Actually not much walking when it's a short warp. For a longer warp, you have to walk a bit. This one I can just stand in one spot. So as we're doing this, we're going to end up with 2 threads in each slot. Now we've threaded up to 2 inches. So I've got my 2-inch mark. I can tell from the marks on my heddle. So I'm going to cut this one. Now it's time to change to the white. So I'm going to cut the green thread, and I'm going to tie it with a nice strong double knot because I don't want this to come loose later on. And now I'm going to make a white stripe. I usually just throw the yarn on the floor, but you might want to use a yarn bowl or something, or a can or a basket or whatever. Sometimes people put it in a bag. Okay, so I'm going to tie my white on here, again, with a nice strong double knot because we want to make sure that it stays tight, doesn't come loose on us. And we're ready to go again. So now you can start threading the slots. We're going to do 2 inches with the white yarn. Here's a quick look at threading all of the slots all the way across the loom. I'm going to do the white stripe and now the green stripe, and I'm keep threading the slots, bring the yarn around the peg until I get all the way across with my 5 stripes. Now that I've finished measuring all the threads, I'm going to take the rubber bands off, take the guide string off, sneeze, and cut all the loops of the thread, and I'm ready to wind on. So the paper is really important. When you're winding on, you want to use a paper to separate the layers of warp as you wind it onto the back beam. So you want to wind a little bit and then come around the other side, and it's really important to adjust the tension as you go. Just give it a nice tug, put another paper in, keep winding. Make sure you're adjusting your paper as you go because sometimes it gets off. Okay, you can see how I can just take it in large groups and give it a nice tug, get a little bit of the slack out. Don't wind it too far because then it'll come out the other side. You'll have to do the slots again. Now we have to thread the holes. So you've got 2 threads in every slot. So what you're going to do is literally take 1 thread out of the first slot, use the narrow end of the hook and put the hook through the hole and bring 1 yarn through the hole. So you'll have 1 yarn in the slot and 1 yarn in the hole. And you're going to work your way all the way across the loom I always work from right to left because I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you might want to go left to right. It's your personal preference. Okay, so I'm going to clamp my loom back to the table. with my little mini clamp. And there's a little notch here that I can use. Clamp it down. Use my rubber bands. I'm going to secure my, I'm going to put my Heddle behind in neutral. Use the rubber bands to secure my front dowel, my apron rod in place. And I'm going to start tying this on from the middle. So I'm going to take 1 inch, pick about 1 inch. Okay, I'm going to split it in half, bring it over the apron rod, and now I'm going to tie 1/2 of a square knot. Take the next bunch over, do the same thing. Split it in half, tie 1/2 of a square knot. I'm going to work my way from the middle to the outside. So I'm going to take 1 inch, tie 1/2 a knot, keep going all the way to the end. Go around the tie-ons for the apron rod. So just go on one side or the other. I'm going to crank it forward just a little to take out some of the slack. And now this is a really important step because I need to make sure they're all under the same amount of tension. So what I'm going to do is tighten each of the knots all the way across. This is why I had to clamp it back to the table. Pull out towards the Heddle and then tighten it back down towards the apron rod, all the way across with the same amount of tension. So I'm going to go out towards the Heddle and tighten it down. This is a really important step because you're going to get all your yarns under the same amount of tension, and that makes your weaving much more even. This is also why we only did 1/2 of a square knot for the first knot. We didn't do a full square knot. Now I'm going to, I like to close my eyes and just feel it. And then you can also feel it from the back of the loom. You're looking for mushy spots. Okay, so this little spot's a little mushy. So I'm just gonna retighten that spot. And then sometimes it's mushier where you started, and sometimes I'll just go through and tighten them all a second time, just to be sure. This is a really important step. So you want to take your time, make sure your tension is even. These feel really nice. Okay. Once you get all of them at the same tension and they feel even, then we're going to go back and tie the second half of our knot. So we want these to be secured. Once we get the tension even on every string in each grouping, we want to tie it down so it's nice and secure, and as you're weaving it will not change. All right, so the tension that's on those threads is going to be locked in place. All right, and now we do have quite a bit of extra here. This is going to become the fringe on our piece, so it doesn't necessarily go to waste. I could have tied it a little closer, so I could have wound it a little more, so I didn't have quite so much here. All right, that feels good. Now we're ready to weave. First thing I'm going to do is make a header. I can unclamp my loom from the table, and I'm going to advance my warp a little. So I'm going to bring it forward. So the way to advance it is you're going to let out of the, you're going to release the front beam. Oh no, hold on. Never mind. We want to release the back beam. And then we're going to crank without, we got to keep a hand on there, else it's all going to go flying. So keep a hand on that back beam. Just crank it forward until your apron rod gets close to the beam. Then we're gonna clip it in place, and then we can crank this back because we want to leave it under tension. All right, so now we're ready to go. So the way this works is we have two different sheds. We call these sheds. This is the separation. We have the up shed, or the up position, so you can see here that we get a nice separation. And we have the down shed. And those are opposite yarns. And that's how we're going to weave. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is use our toilet paper as a spreader. This is what we're going to do to make our header. And I like toilet paper for beginners because it's cheap, it's easy, comes out easy at the end. Alright, so I'm going to put my heddle in the up position. And I'm just going to feed the toilet paper through by hand. I'll leave a little excess on the side. And I'm going to use the heddle, not your fingers, to pack the toilet paper. Then I'm going to push down on the heddle and put it into the down position. And again, I'm going to feed it in, leave a little loop on the side, use the heddle to squish it down. Don't push it with your fingers. I'm going to push it down with the heddle. These looms have little notches in the back, so you can sit at a table and it's pretty comfortable. I'm going to put it back in the up position. I'm going to keep weaving with the toilet paper because I need all my warp ends to be parallel. So it takes about 5 passes with the toilet paper. So see how my gaps are getting smaller and smaller. Now I'm going to go to the down position next. The nice thing about toilet paper is you can just put it in there, rip it at the end. Now I'm ready to go. Okay, so that's my first job, is to just space out my warp threads so that they're all parallel and even, and now I'm ready to weave. I'm gonna just take a few minutes to wind my shuttles. So I need a shuttle with each color because I'm gonna be making stripes of alternating colors. So I'll do the white first. So what I'm gonna do is I'll just hold a little bit over with my thumb. Then I'm just going to wrap it around. You can keep wrapping until your shuttle is about 1 inch thick. You don't want it to be too thick because you still need to be able to put it through the spaces that you create with your heddle. There are various methods for wrapping your shuttles. I go with the tried and true wrap around the ends. We can talk about other methods as we get more experience, but for our very first project, we're just going to go with this technique of wrapping your shuttle just around the end. That's about all I need to get started. I'm going to wrap my shuttle with my green color. We need 1 shuttle of both colors so that we can alternate the colors as we're weaving, because we're going to make stripes of the 2 colors to make our buffalo check pattern, which is going to be super cute. Okay, that's probably enough. We want to just have it about 1 inch, and don't worry because we can always add more while we're weaving. Okay, so we're going to start weaving. So I've got this in my lap, and I've got the notch at a table, and we've got 2 different colors. So I'm going to start with the green first because my outer stripe is green. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the up position first. So we're going to start from the right. When it's in the up position, we're going to put our shuttle in from the right. Okay, so we put it in the up position, feed the shuttle through from the right, and I'm going to pull it all the way through and leave a tail. I can just set it in my lap for now, and now I'm going to use the heddle to pack the yarn in. Now when I say pack, I mean just place. We don't need to pack it with a lot of force. Okay, now I'm going to put my heddle in the down position. Now the way you do this is you're going to push it down, lean it back towards you a little, push it down, and then lock it in place. Okay, so you should see a new gap. And when we're going in the down position, we're going to be coming in from the left. So now we're going to feed our shuttle in from the left. Now, 2 things are going to happen here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the yarn so that the edge, and you can catch it with your finger, you can pinch it and just pull it so that your selvage yarn isn't, you don't want it to go in like this. You also don't want a big fat loop hanging out. So you're just going to pull it so it's just even. Then we're going to leave this at a diagonal. I like to call this the mountain. So we're going to make a little mountain here. Once you have that done, you're going to use your heddle to place your yarn. Now you don't want to pack it too much. You just want to place it next to the other one. Okay. Now, because we just started our tail, we're going to work our tail in on this pass. So I'm going to put the heddle back in the down position, and I'm just going to work my tail in with my fingers right on top of the yarn that I just wove. Okay, and the tail is going to be sticking out. So I'm going to work it in just along the green stripe. And that it's that way because we don't want the tails to be right there off the edge. Now I'm going to go back to the up position. I'm going to feed my shuttle through again from the right, because when we're up, we're going in from the right. Okay, so now you can see here, I'm going to adjust the edge first, so that's nice, just flush. Then I'm going to make my mountain. I can set this in my lap. Place the yarn. Okay, now I'm going to go in the down position, come in from the left. There we go. Make my mountain. Now, we don't want to pack too tight. We want it just to be packed so that it's flush with the next one, okay? I'll go in the up position. Feed it from the right. Up is from the right. Okay, here we go. Adjust my edge first, make a mountain, pack the yarn. Now, I'm getting a little close to my heddle. So we're going to advance the yarn. So the way we're going to advance the weaving, so we're going to advance it forward, is I've got to keep one hand on this knob, and I'm going to release the tension from the back. So I've got to keep a hand on that because otherwise my warp is going to unwind. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to crank this forward. I'm going to roll it forward until it's just about even with the front beam. Reclamp my back knob, and then I'm going to crank it a little bit from the back to tighten my tension. You want to weave under tension. Okay. And now I can just keep weaving. Now my yarn's on the left, so I know I have to go into the down position. You can also look here to see which shed you need to go into next. Adjust the edge, make your mountain, keep going. Just have to unwind the yarn as you go, just so you have enough slack to put it through. So I kind of do a little unwinding when I get to the end. So what we're going to do is 2 inches with the green, and then we're going to change colors. Okay, so there we go. So I'm at 2 inches. Now again, this is our first weaving piece. So we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to teach you the basic technique for changing colors. All right, so I left a tail. I cut my green. And now I'm going to grab my white. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the down position, because that's what I just finished with. Oh, no, I'm not. Sorry. I'm going to put it in the up position because I want to go to my next pass. And I'm going to work the green in first. Okay, so I'm going to work it in for about 1 inch or 2 over to the beginning of the white. And I'm going to leave a little tail out on the top. Okay, so now I'm going to take my white and I'm going to go in right on top of this little green piece that I just started. So I'm in the up position, so I'm going to feed the white from the right side. And now what I'm going to do is, I don't want my white tail hanging off the end. So I'm going to go in about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to pull it out. And I'm going to let it overlap with the green tail for about 1.5 inches or so. So we want a little bit of an overlap. That's going to lock the 2 yarns in place. Okay, so what I've done here again is I was in the up position, I fed in the green, and I pulled out my tail, and then right on top of it, I started my white. Now I have my join right here. It's away from the edge. We don't want the join on the selvage. And now I have my white started. Okay, so I can start weaving with the white. Same thing. Down is coming in from the left. Adjust my edge, weave a mountain, place the yarn. Now I'm getting close to my selvage, so I need to advance my warp again. I'm gonna put my hand on the back knob, release the tension, push it forward. And now, get back. Now what I want to do here is I'm going to take a small scrap of paper. I don't need this whole piece. I just need a small piece, and I'm going to work it in so that I can cover over my knots. So the next time I advance my warp, I'm going to work in a small piece of paper. So now all the weaving is done. We're at the end. We can see that we're at the end of our piece here. I could technically weave maybe 2 more inches, but I'm going to stop because I ended on the green. I'm going to put 3 passes of toilet paper in just to secure my edges because I don't want the thing to come unraveling when I cut it off the loom. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the up position. Feed it in by hand. It's fine. Use the Heddle, press it down. 3 is a nice number because it's a minimum, because it'll lock it in place and you don't have to go crazy. But 2 is not enough. 3 is pretty good. Okay, so there's my toilet paper. Now I'm going to put it in neutral, and here's our big reveal. So I'm going to loosen the tension, let the tension off. And now here is the big moment of truth. I'm gonna cut the threads from the back. Hold your breath. Here goes. All right. And I'm gonna let this out. And here it goes. Ta-da! So I can keep pulling it. And there's the front. So here's my finished piece. Look at that. Gorgeous. I love it. I'm gonna untie these knots from the front just so that I can have enough room for fringe. If I wasn't making fringe, if I was gonna sew it on a sewing machine, then I just cut it. But I actually want to keep some of this extra length, so I'm gonna untie the knots from the front to release it from the front beam. Okay, there we go. Now I'm just gonna pull off here. Move the loom out of the way. All done and ready for finishing. So to finish the piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my toilet paper. I told you it was now only temporary, so we can take this out. Some people like to reuse the toilet paper, which is great, very ecologically friendly. Like I said, you can also use other things like scrap strips of fabric or scrap yarn. Those can also be reused. All right, so I got my toilet paper out. Now I'm going to take small groups of 4 threads and I'm going to make an overhand knot. I'm just going to make overhand knots. So I've got 4 warp threads. So the way you make an overhand knot is you're going to loop this around. You're going to make a loop. Put your ends through the loop. And then tighten it down. Okay. So I'm going to take the next 4, I'm going to make a loop, bring my ends through the loop, and then the trick is to tighten it down so that it comes right up next to the fabric. So you're probably wondering, when do I get to cut off all these little pieces? Well, in weaving, you have to do what's called finishing. Finishing is actually washing your piece. So after I've washed it and it's shrunk up as much as it's gonna shrink, then I'm gonna go back and snip these off, and then they won't come out. But I'm not gonna cut them off until I'm done washing it. So I've got all my ends tied up and everything's ready to go. It's looking really nice. The last thing we're gonna do is wash it. Now, this Encore is machine washable. So I'm just gonna throw it in the wash with a load of laundry. So I'm just gonna lay it out here to dry on top of our very large dog crate. Just gonna spread out the tassels and just leave it here so it can dry, but it looks really nice. It washed up fantastic. After it's dry, we'll trim everything up and get it all done. I really like using a rotary cutter to cut the fringe so that all the fringe yarns are the same length. I'm using a comb here because I want to straighten out all the threads before I cut it. And you can use a big comb or like a hair pick. That's always nice too. That'll just help you straighten everything out. I'm using the ruler here and I'm gonna cut my fringe to be 5 inches long. If you don't have a rotary cutter, you can put a ruler on there and just use a pair of sharp scissors to cut your fringe so that everything's the same length. Now I'm gonna flip it around and do the same thing on the other side. All right, so here it is. Here's our finished piece. It came out very cute. I'm really happy with it. So this will make a nice table runner or a little decoration in your house, and it's completely washable, so that's really nice. For our second project, we're gonna use a variegated yarn for the warp, so something like this. I really like these cake yarns because they're really fun to work with. And I'm gonna be using a solid for my weft, so that we'll get some interesting play with the colors. Subscribe to my channel so you can get notifications about the next project.